Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the Source Radio Power Hour. And today we have a very special guest, Beth. And I'll have Beth tell you a little bit about herself in a minute for all of you. But Beth has a new CD. It's being released on the 31st. And you can go to sourceradio.com and click on featured artists, and right below featured artists is a link so you can pre-order her new CD from your favorite download platform. So, be sure to check it out. You can also hear a sample of the song. You can hear one of the songs from the album when you click on featured artists. So, Beth, welcome.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this interview. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Okay. Let me start off by asking you a question. I'm sure you've been asked before, but my take on it is slightly different. I'm sure you've been asked, who's Beth? Who are you? But what I'm interested in is what's the most important thing you would want someone who's listening in today, what would you want them to know about you and your music? What's the key to Beth?
I think what I would want listeners to take away with them is that I absolutely love and adore singing. I love and adore music. I love and adore the opportunity that I've been gifted to be able to perform for people, to make them smile, to give them good R&B music, to give them a good, great performance. And each performance is very, very special to me because I know there's always someone in the audience who is there looking to hear good music, looking to be entertained, looking for a smiling face to sing to them. That's so therapeutic to people. And so, if anything, I want people to know again that I love what I do and I love to perform, sing, and record good music for people. That's always been my dream. That is a gift that I have, and I love using that gift.
Wonderful. I know your gift is partially inherited. Johnny Griffith, your dad, was one of the Funk Brothers in Motown.
Yes.
So that must have been amazing to grow up in that kind of environment, when Motown was really special.
No, I did not. My father, by the time I was born, I was born in the 70s. So Motown was gone and to LA. So all of the height and the highlight of Motown, I was not here yet. So I was
okay.
Twinkle in my parents' time. My parents weren't even married yet. My parents didn't get married till into the 70s. I was born in the 70s, and Motown left going to LA. I don't even remember, maybe 70, 71, 72, something like that. My father stayed back in Detroit. He did not go. And my parents met and got married. And so, yeah, I missed the Diana Ross, the Temptations, Four Tops, all of that. I was not.
Well, I didn't miss it. I loved it. And, and your dad and the Funk Brothers were just so much a part of the growth of Motown.
Very much.
So regardless of whether they moved to LA or not, you still had your dad's influence.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just missed all of the glitz and glamour of it. But then again, when you said I inherited it, as a little girl, I love fur, glitter, and sparkle, and feathers, and all that stuff. So it was something that I inherited. Didn't even know where I got it from. My parents used to say when I was really little, they knew that I was going to do something in show business because I would just walk around the house singing and, dancing around. And, it was just natural for me to do that. So they weren't surprised when I said, okay, I'm going to sing. They're like, yeah, we knew it.
But I'm sure your dad plugged you into Motown music all the time,
No,
No,
believe it or not. So here's the thing. Music was played in my house. My father continued to play music after Motown was gone. He played music, while I was growing up, but it was never pushed and instilled in me to pursue the career of music. It was pushed and instilled in me to pursue the discipline of music. So I was taught piano. I was taught the discipline of it. I was in band, I was in choir in school. But to pursue it as a career, absolutely not. In fact, I'm doing completely opposite of what they wanted me to do.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
As That sometimes that's necessary because when kids are pushed, they oftentimes say, it's too much and back away from it. So you were able to come to it on your own terms. So when was your aha moment? When was that moment when you knew this is what you wanted to do?
Mm, when that's a great question because I've had several aha moments in my life. And some of these aha moments are aha for that moment. And then the next moment, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to do this. So it kind of changes. So I really think that growing up, I thought singing was interesting. I thought it was fun. It was something that I wanted to do. Of course, the lights and camera and action, when all that stuff is not actually on you, it looks exciting. But when you actually start
Right.
to do it and you see the work that it takes, that's when you really make the determination within yourself. Okay, I really want to do this because I see the work. So there's been several aha moments. I think, some of them have been as a young person completing solos or being gifted solos in the choir. Things like that make you feel very special and make you feel like you have a gift, but you still haven't really um gotten into the meat of what the business is. And then I think when I started getting my first paid gigs, playing at bars and weddings and bar mitzvahs and things like that, I was like, oh, okay, they're paying me now. Okay, we're on to something. So that those were other aha moments. But I really think that what really did it for me was when put out my first album in 2017 and people started to really buy my original work. And me actually having that album being seen by scouts on NBC The Voice, and I actually got on the show. And then you have someone like an EGOT winner like John Legend to pick me and think that I'm good enough. Those were really pivotal moments for me, that everything prior to that led up to those moments. And I had just been working on building my confidence and trying to be the best that I could be with voice lessons and teachings and studying. But when you get on national television, I think it's someone who you look up to as a mentor and someone who's the EGOT. They've won everything that you could win as an artist, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. And then they say, you know what, you're good. Then you really feel like that was the aha moment for me, the
Right.
major one. And that one kind of was the confirmation that the little aha moments that I had were really what I thought that they were, because you can think you're good and you're not. So those were the moments that really said, okay, what you've been thinking and what you've been working for um, is relevant. So I think that was that one big one, I think, for me.
Right. I like to create an analogy between a vocalist with a great voice to a chef who's a great chef, and then they go to open a restaurant, and then there's the business about being a chef. So yeah, having a voice, you got to start there. But then
Hmm.
when you get into the business, it's an eye opener. It's not. It's a lot of work. It's not just about singing, and that's why I like to do the analogy with a chef. It's a when you get into the business, the industry, and you see what's involved and the commitment. A lot of people just can't do it. It's not easy.
They can't, and you have to have great people that work with you. You have to have a great team. There are my calendar. I can't juggle a calendar. I miss things. So that's why Ron, that's what he does. He schedules books. We talk every day, multiple times a day. He keeps me on point. I have a manager that helps guide and manage the business portion, because I have my own record label. So I do all of this myself.
Right.
So I've been blessed enough to be able to delegate jobs to people, picking what songs go on my projects, how I sing, how I record. I have a person to do that. Because if I pick everything I want and I sing just what I want, it can't work. It has to be what makes sense for Beth and building this artist and building the brand. So I have some really great people that work with me to help everything down to the clothes that I wear, everything.
Sure. That used to be handled by record labels, A&R, and you don't see that anymore. And you need to have your own team, and it
I
takes
have an
a
A&R.
while.
I'm
Yeah.
old school. I have everything they used to do. I do. I have an A&R. I have a manager. I have assistants. I have stylists. All of these people are incredible, and I've just taken my time and picked people that work very well together as a team, but work very well with me. And we all come together, and we're able to work, and it's just been really, really great. I feel super, super blessed with the people that I work with.
Yeah, Beth, I think that's why I'm going to go back for a moment, the analogy with a chef. You know, you have to put together a team. And,
Hmm.
before the record label did this, they gave you a contract, they put you out, on the road to open for one of their other stars, but they took care of everything. And now you have to learn the business and take care of all that yourself.
Yes.
There's a clear advantage. The clear advantage is you own you. You are your owner, and
Hmm.
that's major. A lot of the recording stars like Neil Young, he fought the labels and refused to ever give in. He wanted to control his own music, and it was an exception to the rule. But
Hmm.
today, if you really are dedicated, you want to succeed. Other tools are there, but it's
Hmm.
like we were talking about, it's a lot of work.
It is.
You know,
But I
yeah,
love it. I love the work though. That's the thing. I love the process. I love the work. I love being able to look back and gauge my growth over time. And then I love being able to set goals and meeting them. So it's I love the whole process.
Yeah. Look, let's talk about something that's I'm curious about myself.
Okay.
Who are your musical influences at different stages of your career to where you are today? I'm sure they've changed over time. You've added, subtracted. So, what were some of the musical influences that really, are part of your musical creative process?
Mm, so the first one is Whitney Houston, and she's
Okay.
always on the list. She never changes. I would say Aretha Franklin as well. I've been influenced by, listen to, and study Tony Braxton, Mariah Carey, Gladys Knight, Patti LaBelle, Luther Vandross, um, Barbara Streisand, Bette Midler. Everybody. I'm a little bit of all of them, and I've had to perform all of their music over time. So when you have to learn and study a song and be able to perform that song, and it becomes a part of you, you take a part of that artist and their inflections, and how they sing. And so I'm all of those singers, I think, all wrapped up in one. Those are my favorites.
One of my favorites, and she crossed over into other musical forms, is Phyllis Hyman, who
Hmm.
ended up being on Broadway.
Hmm.
Um, and you have been on The Voice, you've been on television, um, you've been on Dancing with the Stars.
Hmm.
So, that's another aspect of your work that's kind of unique. You don't see a lot of vocalists who do that. There's been some highly successful ones. Frank Sinatra crossed over into a terrific acting career.
Hmm.
And so it's doable. But this is again part of the work that you're putting in to broaden your base, increase your brand, get your music out to different kinds of audiences. And
Yeah.
it's wonderful that you're doing this. And again, it's very difficult. So let
It
me ask you
is.
another
Hey,
kind of
usually,
question.
you said it's usually difficult. No, it is. It's not you. It
Yeah,
is. It's just I
it
just
is
keep
difficult.
going,
Yeah.
and you have to just keep going.
I want to compare you in a way to a friend of mine who's a wonderful vocalist.
Okay.
Um, she was a backup vocalist for the Rolling Stones for years. Lisa Fisher,
Oh, I
who
love Lisa
also
Fisher. Oh, she's yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah she's wonderful, and she was with Luther Vandross, who you mentioned also,
Yes.
early on, and she was a backup vocalist, much like you were, in your career.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're really moving out. You have a terrific CD coming out. It's the number three on Amazon, right behind John Legend.
I know, right? Isn't it?
You know, yeah, it's not funny. It's how odd things work out, but
Yeah.
there you are, and you know, and Lisa had it was hard for her to step out after all those years and become, a lead vocalist. How does that feel for you? Was that difficult for you to make that transition?
Mm-hmm. Because
Okay.
background, yeah, like yes, there's no like no doubt in my mind. Because first of all, when you're a background singer, that's a lot of work as well. You are adding to a song, you're adding nuances, you're adding feels, you're adding flavors, you're adding all this good stuff to a great record with a great artist. 9 times out of 10 that you're doing background for, and but being a background singer can be one of those things that makes you lazy, because you're
Yes.
used to just oohing and ahhing in the back and you don't have all the pressure that the lead artist has. So when I started to transition, and by the way, I still do background too. So,
Right. Right.
that's one of the things I have to balance when I'm doing background for artists and then when I'm being in front, and everything that I pour out and being in the front, I have to pull back when I go back into the background because I have to remember that's not my show.
Right.
So the transition is, I guess, juggling, going back and forth, giving it your all when you're the lead artist, and then suppressing everything when you're doing background. And it's a teeter totter. You're going back and forth. I was very apprehensive of being solo, or going solo, very apprehensive of doing it. I knew I could
Mhm.
do it, and I was not honestly in the beginning looking forward to the challenges I would face. One of them being people taking me seriously. That I
Yes.
really wanted to do solo. You see people that put out a single and they never put out anything else, or they put out one album and they never put out anything else because the journey is just too long, too hard, it's too much work, there's too much rejection, or life just gets in the way and they just never get back to it. So I really had to really focus and say and have a conversation with myself. You have to hear people say, okay, I had to talk to myself. I said, self, do you really want to do this? Because if you start, do you really want to pursue and push this for the solo artistry? Or do you want to remain comfortable where you are in the back because you got a good spot that you have and you can continue to build your resume and work with other people? And I said, I want to do everything that I can possibly do while there's still breath in my body. So yeah, it's a lot. I have days where I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna just do backs today and I don't have to worry about anything else. I can put on my black, just sway from right to left and say whoop whoop. And then some days I'm like, oh God, it's my show. I have to sing and entertain people for this hour. It's a lot.
Yes. This is why I compared you to Lisa, because Lisa, those words could have been coming right out of Lisa's mouth. The very thing you talked about,
Wow.
the insecurity. 20 years with the Stones, who's going to take her seriously as a lead vocalist? And so she fought with all of this. It was very tough for her to do too. And when she did backgrounds, it was simple. Don't bore us, just sing the chorus.
Right. That's it. Get your
and
check and go home. That's it. Yeah.
yeah, and then to step out and realize that you have people behind you now doing what you used to do. It's very difficult to transition. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So yeah,
but once you get out there and you start to build your fan base, and one of the things that I love to do is connect with fans and to talk to them and for them to express to me what my music makes them feel like. That's what continues to make me push and continues to make me go.
absolutely. And again, and I wanted to bring up Lisa because she was still with the Stones when she had her big hit single, "How Can I Ease the Pain?"
Oh,
And yeah,
such a
and
good song. Oh,
she was a Grammy winner, so she had to keep going back and forth, like, you know, continue to do the backgrounds, and yet she's a Grammy winner as a lead vocalist, and that's what you're going to be headed to. You'll get your Grammy, and you will, and it's hard. There's no question about it. So let me ask you a question. Some artists love working in the studio. Okay, and of course you have a studio album coming out, and other artists love the roar of the crowd, the thrill of engaging people. What's your preference? What do you like?
Ah, I like them both actually, because in order to get it's just a process. In order to get to the audience, you have to go in the studio, you know? So not unless you just want to be a cover singer, you know? So and that I don't want to do. I did that, I took doing corporate work. So the studio has an expiration date on it for me. Like I can go in there for so long. I want to work. I want to get it done. And I'm like, okay, we've recorded, we got it done. And let's do it. But I like to give it the proper time and attention. But in order to get to the audience, you got to do the studio. So I like them both for what they both bring something special, because you can create something great in the studio. And this has happened to me many times, and I'm sure other artists know this too. You can record something great in the studio, and then when you perform it live, you feel something different and it's greater, or you add something else to it. So both of them just like, they go hand in hand to me. I can't pick one.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to throw something else at you here. Chuck Berry, who I always loved, as he got older, one of the things that Chuck Berry, talked about, he was asked, song selection when you perform live, and he said, "I don't sing what the audience wants to hear. I sing what I want them to hear."
Mm,
And and so what he, for a lot of artists, they try to figure out what is, for this particular gig at this particular place, what are people going to want to hear? And Chuck
mhm.
Berry said he didn't really care. He wanted to give them something they hadn't heard or thought about that made him not only unique, but they would walk away singing when they left the concert.
Right.
Yeah. So, I thought that was a very unique perspective on song selection. So, how do you go about song selection when you're doing a gig?
I let my MD pick everything.
That's easy.
I say we have a show. It's an hour. It's 45 minutes. It's 30 minutes. What am I singing? And he says, I'll look at the list and call you back. He asked me where, date, time, all that kind of stuff. And then if I'm opening for someone, we try to gauge what their crowd is, and he picks. We have some shows that we have set, and then we do swap out songs here and there. But what I mentioned earlier that I have a great team that I work with. One of the things I try to do is to delegate people who are expertise is in their area. And my music director is exceptional. And so for me, and we talked about this too, me doing the transition from background to lead singer, I need as less pressure on me as possible. I'm getting my mind together to transition from backs to lead. And then I got to pick these songs. And then I got to pick out what I'm gonna wear. And I'm a girl, so I'm just extra. I'm it's super extra with the wardrobe. I love clothes. I love to plan my outfits. That's just my thing. And so if there's one less thing that I have to think about, he'll send me a list, and I'll say fine. Or I may say, hey, I really want to kind of do this, and he'll say, okay, we'll swap this for this. I mean, it's really no stress. I don't let that consume me, and I don't really get into that.
That's an interesting perspective because, you know, um, it's where artistry meets business in a sense. Because, I worked with an artist and brought her along from doing bars until she was playing at Blues Alley and the City Winery and
Hmm.
the House of Blues in New Orleans. And, she was making it towards an A level vocalist. And, you know, what's really difficult sometimes is when you look at song selection, where does your management cross over into artistry? Do they stay in their own lane, or how sensitive are you to the fact that they'll be choosing or selecting your songs? In your
Mm,
case, you've given that up. But for a lot of artists, they have a difficult time. Again, this is the business side meets the artist side.
mhm.
And for a lot, for some artists, they don't understand that the songs that you sing are a business decision.
They are.
That's what, yeah, yeah. And so here you may have a list of 100, but what you actually pick and choose, or who you work with that you trust to pick and choose, that can make or break an artist so fast. That's part of the brand. So
It,
go ahead.
my music director is extremely skilled and he is constantly working with artists and touring, and he's been producing music for probably about 30 years. So I trust his judgment and I trust him knowing me, and I trust him knowing how to, once I give him the deets on where we are, the venue, the crowd, the who else is on the ticket, then he's able to make a decision. And I trust him. Like I said, if there's something I want to do, okay, I'll tell him I want to do this. Okay, fine. But for the most part, where you are an expert working with me, I allow you to stay in your lane and do what you do best. If you ask me or if I need to give input, then I do. But that's why I think my team works so good. I don't call Ron and say, "Hey, you need to call and you need to do this." I don't do that. Ron knows what he does and he calls me back with what he's has for me, and then we discuss it, and then we chew the meat, spit out the bones with what he's done. I don't ever tell him what to do. And so my manager, I don't tell my manager what to do. I will call him with suggestions. My music director, I let him handle the music. And all I want to do is sing and put on a cute outfit, really. I trust that the people that I work with know my material and they know how to gauge me and to package me to present me properly to the audience.
That's great. That's really wonderful. We talk about venues. You and I were talking earlier about the city winery, and it has about 300 capacity. Then there's of course the Capitol Jazz Fest, and there's all kinds of large festivals.
Mhm.
Um, what rocks your boat? Do you like being part of a larger ticket with other stars, and play for larger audiences? Or you like the intimacy of a smaller venue? How do
Oh, well, there you go with your question. So listen, I like both. And I'm gonna tell you why. So I'm gonna tell you why. Because I've been doing background and I've done background for some amazing artists. I did years touring with Anita Baker. I've been touring with Kim. Um, we're on a little break right now, but I'm actually touring with the OJs right now. I've toured with Najee. I'll be back with him in November. And so I have had the opportunity to do almost every festival, almost, not all. I've been to hundreds of venues all over the world. I've done small, I've done large. So I've been able to get the feel for both. The intimate groups, I love those because those are when you really can connect with your audience. But if you are able to perform in a certain kind of way, you can connect with your audience with the large group as well.
right?
So I've done both and I love both. I've done theaters, I've done arenas, I've done stadiums, I've done little spots, and they all hit different. And I think sometimes, based on where you're performing, you may want to change your music, and adjust your set list possibly. But for the most part, I love them all. And I love the fact that you can engage your audience. If you connect with your audience properly, you can engage them small or large. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
my
yeah.
answer. I love them both.
Hey, that's great. That's great. You cover all your bases.
I've
you
just
know,
been fortunate to be able to have experienced both, the big and the small, because if I had not, I wouldn't have been able to answer that because I would be like, well, I don't know. But I have been
yeah,
in some places where it's been 40, 50,000 people. Then I've been some places where it's been 300 people or 100. I, you know, they're all are great.
Yeah, and you're really playing with some great artists. You know, Najee performed with the artist I was managing with Pieces of a Dream.
Oh
They were
yeah,
the
know them
they were
too.
the
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've known them for years, you know, and you know, James Lloyd, and you know, they're just wonderful artists, and they were the studio
Hmm.
band for her first EP, and Najee performed on it, and he's
Okay.
just amazing. So you know,
He's great.
yeah, you're playing with some of the absolute greats. Um, Dennis
Okay.
Chambers was an Dennis Chambers was another person that performed with the artist I was working with. So it's really important to have that caliber musician because they have to be as good as you. And you know that's tough. It's tough to find those those musicians, studio musicians, that is as good as the vocalist and can enhance what the vocalist is trying to put out and really understands the vocalist, understands the nuances of the music. You know, which brings me to the question about you as a songwriter. I know you don't just do covers; you write your own songs. Tell me a little bit about how do you get an inspiration for a song? Is it the music first? Is it the lyric that strikes you? You know, I spent some time with Paul Simon, and he used to carry a little spiral pad in his pocket, and if he heard sounds, or if he, you know, it could be in a kitchen in a restaurant, dishes banging together, he would
Mm.
make notes. He was always trying to find a rhythm or a lyric if he heard people talking that would make sense to him. So how do you go about it? You know, how do you start? Is it the same process all the time, or how do you do it?
You know, I am getting better with my songwriting. There has always been a um song already that I've written to, meaning there's somebody that already had a they brought me a song and I would hear the music and write to it. Or I'm normally in a setting where organically we'll talk and say, hey, we're gonna write a song today. Because I don't really write by myself. I like to hear music. I like to hear sounds and they influence my process. So I think on rare occasions, and it's probably been maybe two or three, that I've actually heard lyrics in my head, and but they came out in the form of poetry. I didn't hear any melody, there was no music, so I just wrote the lyrics down and it was like a poem. So that has happened a couple times, rare, but most of the time somebody will give me some music and I'll write to it like that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting too when we start talking about being a songwriter. You can write songs, but then how do you put them together for like a CD? You know, Reagan Whiteside was on the Power Hour. I don't know if you're familiar with Reagan, but she's a flutist or a
Mm.
flautist, you want to pronounce it. And she just put together a CD, and she's number one on Billboard in jazz. And it wasn't until they actually started to play the CD that she realized, oh my God, I have no vocals on it. She didn't realize there wasn't a single vocal on this CD, and she's a vocalist too, you know. So you know, it's one thing to be a songwriter; it's another thing to produce, you know, a CD and have a mix of songs.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you know, it's really this is what you talked about from the start. It's a lot of work that goes into every aspect of music. You know, people think you just get up there and sing, and it doesn't work that way. You know?
I wish it was that simple. That somebody hands you a mic and you open your mouth and all this greatness just pours out, but it doesn't happen like that. There's
Do you
pencil
play
and
it?
there's paper and there's scribble and there's cross out and then there's
Yeah.
you record this whole thing and then you go back and listen to it and say, "Oh my god, that was terrible." And then you start all like it's all of
Yeah,
that, you know?
yeah, yep, yeah. It is. You know, I'm sure you scratch lyrics on a piece of paper sometimes, also, and put it away, and may not pop up for a while, and
Right?
suddenly there it is. You
Yeah.
know, we're talking about songwriting. Let me ask you a question about something. You know, songwriting used to be organic. You might have a team. Somebody might bring you a song. But the actual process of creating the lyrics and composing the music was done in studio with people working together. And
Mhm.
since 2016 or 17, songs are now being created using mathematical algorithms. There's a huge team. It's no longer the vocalist, the musician, a team of people who have composed songs and put lyrics with music together. But it's done with an algorithm, and they look for the hook, and which hook they think would really have the most attraction to a listener.
Hmm.
It's not even a matter of how good this song is. It's a matter of will it click with a listener,
Mhm.
and Neil Young and Sheryl Crow, and Sheryl Crow is going to be on the show also.
Mm.
They both have been really adamant that it's destroying music. It's making music so homogenized. And Neil Young especially referred to urban music and the fact that, the diversity of music that's being played on radio stations has shrunk dramatically.
Mm.
And it's hard for artists to get airtime. Song composition is not the same. And if you start using algorithms, where's it going to leave the songwriter? Now,
Right.
of course, the songwriter might want to tweak what the computer does, but that's not the same as winning a Grammy for writing a song. So how do you feel about the technology? It's worked for you because you have your own label. It's worked for you. It's been working for you. But are there limits? The other side of this is too, and I guess I just wanted to get your take on this.
Mhm.
Spotify, a lot of the distribution systems for independent labels, for indie labels. If you're an accomplished artist, it works for you. If you don't have 600,000 hits, it's not going to work for you. You get 1,000 hits, you make $4. If you're just starting out. So, what's your feeling about the direction the music industry is going in? Is it something you're comfortable with? Exactly what is it? How do you
Mm.
feel about it?
That's a great question. I am, I'm constantly hearing about new things that are happening in the business. Um, and a lot of times I don't get into it actually, Mel, to be honest with you, because I know that the old way still works. You know what I'm saying? And technology has the capability of falling apart. But when the good old pen and paper and sitting at a piano, you know, that'll never die. The old way of getting a group of writers together and you all get your thoughts together and you get and somebody's playing and you all write to come together to make a song, that'll never die. Um, a computer making the song, I mean, and even, with us pushing to get Spotify streams, and you don't get any money from that, and it just looks good with the numbers. I'm really for if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which is pencil and paper writing a song, um sitting in a room and you guys write and work it out. I mean, I love getting teams of people together and we write and we have a writing camp, we have a writing session. You come up with great songs like that, talking it
Yes.
out, telling stories and coming up with ideas and melodies. Somebody's on the piano, but you come up with great music like that. That's the way that's gonna never die. Computers, you can turn them on and off, they'll lock up, they'll freeze up, they'll do what they're gonna do. We know that. um I was not really familiar with the algorithm making music. It and if and like you said, the song wins. Who wins? Who wins the Grammy? The computer? Like what happened? You
Exactly.
know,
And
I'm
yeah,
just not.
that's been
I don't. I'm really. That's not really my thing. The one thing I don't like, I will say this about the music business, is how the record labels are not necessarily signing people like they used to back in the day
yes,
and providing
yes,
tour support and marketing support. Now, those things I do wish would come back. That's needed. An artist like me would greatly benefit from tour support money or a marketing budget. So, you know.
no, you're absolutely right, and that's one of the things that Sheryl Crow is really talking to me about the lack of originality and complexity, and you mentioned melody and orchestration, and she said it's being so homogenized, and also, of course, and I'm using these two because they're such great artists, Neil Young and Sheryl Crow. When you have the digitization of music like through Spotify, when people download it, they're saying it mutes the music, it mutes the complexity. It doesn't sound the same as they intended, and so, technology is a double-edged sword. It was supposed to have democratized music, and it has to the extent that almost anyone can have a song on Spotify.
Right.
But it hasn't democratized it in terms of pay. You know,
That's wrong.
and, yeah, but it reflects something else too: the absence of the record label. Now we know that record labels rip people off. Little Richard, was one of the people that fought against it and won. That he was never paid for the music he did.
Mm.
And of course there was drawbacks, but the other side of it was, they would give you studio time and pay for it, which is expensive. They would put you out on the road and, like you said, give you a tour budget. And they would do your A&R and your publicity.
Right.
And, and while it was selective and it wasn't necessarily democratic, in some ways, it was more democratic than what's taking place today. It was with a lack of pay. Again, this is part of my pet peeve. Disc jockeys, who bring in a computer, and of course they do tweak the music, but they're taking somebody else's music and benefiting from it, and that person is not benefiting who wrote or sang it. And I have problems, having worked in the music industry myself, with where it's heading and how more. In some ways, it's more difficult now for a musician to be a full-time musician than it was when record labels were in their heyday.
Everything's computerized. They can play your part on a computer now.
Yeah, they call it sampling.
Yeah, it's like, so what happens to working musicians? What do they do? You don't have to bring in horns. You don't have to bring in strings now. You push a button and play it
Exactly.
out. And of course, it sounds good, but I feel sorry for the real musicians who want to work.
Exactly. So that's why when I was really glad to have you on the show, because I did notice that you're doing a lot of things old school, and I think it's a blessing because we need more of that in the industry, and for very young musicians, they're locked in to the digitization, computerization of music, and they don't know the texture and richness of what came before. Then you have people like John Batiste. John Batiste is wonderful. I mean, he has the capacity to take the old music and to update it in a way that doesn't destroy it, but he creates. It's wonderful. There are a few of them. Bruno Mars is another one. So what we really need, and this is what I'm hoping that we see, is a return on the radio waves to more richness and more complexity in the kinds of music they play.
Yes.
Because otherwise so much is lost. Just lost. You can't find a jazz station anymore.
You cannot. And you have to go onto satellite radio to find a jazz station. They used to have they weren't satellite. What do you call it? Celestial radio. You could just listen to regular radio, have jazz stations, but they don't have that anymore. And then even with me being a singer, singing doesn't sound the same anymore. It's more everybody's mumbling and they sound like they're going through auto tune. And I'm like, what are they saying? What are they saying? And then when you actually figure out what they're saying, you're like, oh my God, they said that. So it's just like so I want to hear more musicianship. That's one reason I love working with KEM, because KEM has a 3-man horn section. I love that. He has, and of course with and the OJs have sometimes 6 horns, and they don't use any stems. OJs don't use any stems. Everybody's playing. The vocals are live and raw. We're not in the box, none of that. And that's cool. I love that. With KEM, he's using the real musicians. I appreciate that. Najee uses the real musicians. Of course, Anita had real musicians. I love that even in this modern time, I'm able to work with people that are using the real musicians and demand and require excellence from the vocalists for us to really be able to sing, and it's not computerized, and that you hear real singing, and that musicians are actually being hired to do the work. So I appreciate the experience that I've had working with them, because I can't do anything but take that with me, where I go, because that's all I know.
That's wonderful. And again, that's real music. I'm not really sure, what you can call a lot of the music today.
Right.
You know, when rap music came out, I remember Paul Simon making a comment to me. I mentioned it to him, and Sinbad was doing some rap, and Paul said, "Well, that's not really music; it's syncopation." And so much music, has lost the orchestration, the richness, the string section,
Hmm, hmm.
the horn section, like you're talking about. You can't digitize that and have it sound the same. It just doesn't. So, I
But
think
even
again,
rap, remember when rap came out, of course it was like, what is that? But at least you actually heard the
yes,
artist talking and
yes,
rapping, you heard their voice. Now the rappers are computerized, they're singing, they're going through, and so then you don't even know what there was a time when the rap was clear. We knew what they were saying, just like singing clear.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
now everything is digital, and it just sounds like they put everything in a bowl and shook it up and just threw it against the wall, and this is what you have now.
yeah, yeah. Look, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but because of the kind of music you do, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show because you are a true musician, even though you're a vocalist. I didn't even ask you if you play any instruments. Do you?
I did. So I grew up playing piano. My father taught me piano, so I can read, and I'm grateful for that knowledge that I have. But I played clarinet and tenor saxophone in school. And then when I started wearing lipstick and it wasn't cute to get lipstick all on the reed, I stopped and I just played piano. So I
Yeah,
was a musician at
good,
one time. Yeah.
wonderful. When I was talking with Reagan on the show, one of the things that Reagan said, I asked her, "How do you ever decide to play the flute?" And she said, "Well, I was in high school and I wanted to be in the band. And by the time I they had said, okay, come on, you can do it. I asked what instruments they had. Do you have a guitar?" And they said, "No more guitars." Do you have a sax? No more sax. Well, what do you have? They said, "The flute." So
Right.
she, she, she said it took her 2 weeks to get a sound out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thing for that thing, flute,
yeah, but
trumpet, clarinet, saxophone, your lungs, man. Oh,
yeah, but it's interesting how musicians like your dad got you to play piano, you learned to read, and she just accidentally picked up the flute, and now it's a major part of her career. And I'm always interested in how musicians, vocalists come to their craft, and so much of it is accidental and vicarious as well as purposeful and hard work. You
yeah. It
know?
was like, yeah, you're gonna be in the band, you're gonna play something. This is, and then my father brought home a clarinet. This is what you're gonna play. I said, okay.
Yeah, there you go. You
Yeah.
know, okay. Let me ask you about the other talented aspects you have. You've been on The Voice. I think that was season 16.
Yeah.
You were on The Voice, and you were also Dancing with the Stars. How did that happen? Tell me about.
Oh boy, the Dancing with the Stars. Listen, that was probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had, but one of the most rewarding. Under the direction of Ray Chu, who is still the music director for Dancing with the Stars. I met Ray Chu because he was doing music direction for Anita Baker, and we were out on the road, and I'd worked with him for
Okay,
probably a year or two, and they had a particular night which was called Icon Night, which they had 22 songs that they were doing, and they have a normal team that's there, that's been there for several seasons, that does all of their vocals. But they needed to bring in some more people to help cover, and ironically enough, they called me in to sing Whitney Houston, and they called me in to sing
great.
Franklin, two of my favorite singers. And because I had worked with Ray probably a year or two, been on the road with him with Anita, he knew my work ethic, he knew my voice, he knew what I could do. And he gave me a call and said, hey, you know, can you be in LA in like 2 days? And I'm like, oh my God, yes. And so, because I live in Detroit, so I was out there, I had a great time. And the other significance of me doing that show, which I'm thankful and grateful for, That was my first SAG job. So, I'm a member of SAG after now, and that was what put me in it, working on NBC or ABC. That was ABC, working on that show, which was great because when I went to The Voice, I was already in SAG after. So that put me on a whole nother pay scale and a whole nother place on the show, with, how I was handled because I'm in the union. So yeah, I'm grateful for that.
That's great. And The Voice, how did you get on The Voice?
They reached out to me. Actually, I had put my album out in 2017, and they have, some people know, some people don't. The Voice has scouts that look for people, as well as they do have the big cattle call audition, and now they've been, incorporated the online auditions. So at the time, I think they were doing online. I'm not sure because it was like 2016, 2017. I put my album out, and they reached out to my manager, and I had declined. My mother had been sick. My mother had had a stroke, and my whole thing was just taking care of her. Thank God she's better. She's still alive to this day, and she's
Wonderful.
with me. So I'm grateful for that. But I had to just really focus on getting her back, as healthy as possible. It was just a whole lot going on. My mother had a home. We had to sell my mom's home, move her in with my husband and I couldn't do a show. And then when they called me, I was like, I'm not going on no TV show to sing, because at that time I was already touring. So I had finished with Anita Baker. I was on the road with Kim, and I was working. I was a working singer. I had put my record out. And of course, in my mind, I figured my first record was going to blow up and make me a star. So I had no, this, I don't need that because I've already put a record out. And plus my mom's sick. So let me just take care of my mom. I'll be fine. And I declined the first offer, and because I had watched The Voice and I had watched American Idol, and I was like, I'm not going on one of them singing shows for them to get me on TV and humiliate me and tell me I'm not good enough, So I'm not doing it. And then, Mel, they called back a second time, and they called back a second time, maybe 6, 7 months later, after my record hadn't really been selling. And I said, you know what? That voice don't sound so bad. So my thing was, and I've always been like this, you want something different, do something different, right? So they called, and I talked to my manager, I talked to my husband, and I said, my mom's better. I'm not doing anything else. Why not? And had no idea that that show would change my life the way that it did. The confidence that I gained from being on that show, growing my fan base from being on that show, and just being in Hollywood and working in that capacity, strengthened me. And I'm just grateful. I didn't win the show. I didn't go as far as I would have liked to have gone, but my experience there working with a television show as big as that and being able to be at Universal Studios working was just life changing for me. Like I didn't come back home the same person. And even my expectation for how things should be. I mean, the show actually spoiled me a little bit because I came back home and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what I do over here. Like I'm not used to that. So I got a little spoiled, but yeah, it was a great thing. It was great.
Yeah, well, you know that old saying, you'll never know the excitement of sailing on the high seas if you don't leave the harbor.
There it is. And I
So,
truly
so
left the
yeah,
harbor.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm never the same now. My whole
yeah.
expectation and level of achievement and standards that I set for myself are so much higher.
That's really wonderful. That's another thing. You know, having a career today, because again, we talked about the absence of strong record labels and that kind of support. Being able to go into different parts of the industry, into the movies. I have a good friend who's a songwriter, and then he just started writing some songs for Hollywood, and now,
Mm.
he's he writes for 10 different movies every year. He composes music, and
Wow.
he started out just being a jazz song composer, and he just ventured into Hollywood, and it opens doors and takes part of you that you may never have developed, had you not, branched off and moved into something different,
Right.
and that's what you've done. That's what you've done. Let me ask you another kind of question. I'm sure you've been asked what if you had your choice, who would you like to collaborate with or sing with or tour with? But I have a different take on it. Your career has evolved, like you pointed out. You started out playing piano. You started out, doing backgrounds. You went into The Voice, and you went into Dancing with the Stars. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And if you had to collaborate with somebody to get you there, is it going to be the same Beth, or is there another Beth that you want to see down the road?
Ooh, so there's a couple things I want to do, Mel. Like I want to do more acting. And so I see myself on the silver screen. I see myself headlining a tour. I would love to work with Babyface. I
Oh,
would love
wow.
Diane,
Wow.
you know. They write those big, beautiful songs and what girl doesn't want a big, beautiful song, you know? So I would love to
Sure.
work with them. Um, and I see myself doing more albums, like my second album is coming out September 30th. I'm really excited about that. I Doing the first album, you know, I thought I was gonna whip around and do a second album the very next year, and that didn't happen. So now I know more of the time that it takes. So in 5 years, I see myself with hopefully album number three, because it was 5 years from my first album to my second album. So within 5 years, I would like to have another album out. In less than 5 years, I would love to be in a movie. I would love to have a soundtrack for a movie, and I would love to be touring, doing a world tour. I would love to headline a tour or be right before the headliner, be a great support act on that tour.
Terrific. Yeah, I can see you doing that too. You have that kind of personality. You'd be really
Thank
great
you.
on the movies. You know,
Thank
you were interviewed by my friend Dr. G in the UK,
Yes.
about a week or two ago, and your music is now being played on the BBC and also on Morph and some of the UK stations that extend globally. And one of your songs already jumped, it hit the top 10 immediately, and now it's number five, and it's probably going to head up to number one. So your people love your music, and they
Thank
and they're not just listening to it here; they're listening to it around the world. And you
thank
know,
you.
I asked Dr. G, where are some of the listeners coming from? You have a lot of listeners from Japan and India.
Wow. Okay, well then
Yeah,
let's go. Let's
yeah, and that going to Japan. A couple of people I'm friends with in the music industry, the Granger brothers. I don't know if you know Gary Granger. He's a bass player, and he's played with Santana. He's played with everybody, and he goes to Japan frequently because R&B and soul and jazz are really hot in Japan.
yeah, yeah.
So but you're drawing a vast listening audience globally, who really love your voice and love your music. So
Thank
I think
you.
I think the album, yeah, the album when it comes out, next week is going to really take off. I think it's going to be just a winner for you. So
Thank you so much. I'm
you're
excited.
welcome.
I cannot wait until September 30th. It's seen when we first started promoting the album and putting it out, or picking the date, um, September 30th seemed so far away, and now it's right around the corner. So
Yeah.
next week it'll be out. Yeah.
Well, you're the featured artist of the week on my station, Source Radio Network,
Thank
and and of course, we're featuring your album, Get to Know Me, right?
Yes.
And
Thank
and yeah, and people are listening to your track. Just this morning, I saw that just today, 6,100 people were listening to your music this morning. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So it's resonating, Beth. Your music is really hitting people's heartstrings, and I just want to congratulate you because I think you're an incredible talent, and I think we've only seen the beginning. So let me put this up here next to us, and you can talk about some of your upcoming. There it is.
Okay.
You can talk about some of your upcoming dates. You have a date with KEM coming up September 30th.
Yes. And that's actually the release date of the album. So I'll be with Kim on September 30th. October 1st, which is the very next day, I'll be back home in Detroit, and I'll be doing something called Sister Strut, which is for breast cancer awareness. It'll be in downtown Detroit, and they just continue to educate the community on breast cancer awareness. And there's also a walk that is involved with that for the survivors. You can walk for somebody. If you are a cancer survivor, you can walk for yourself or represent someone. So that's October 1st, and they do that every year here in Detroit. October 27th, that's going to be something really interesting. And I just actually talked to the family today. New Day Foundation benefit is for cancer patients. And I actually talked to the family today. And I will be in I'm an actual singer, but it's going to be a lip singing competition, and it'll be with other
Oh,
city. We'll pick a great song and we'll come out, and whoever lip sings the best will win the competition, and the family will receive prizes based on the person that is representing for them or competing for them. And November 5th, Najee will be in Detroit with Michael Franks, so I'll be appearing with him. And November 26th, I'll be back with the Mighty Mighty OJs in Cincinnati, Ohio. So we have some other dates, and there's one date actually that's missing on here. October the 8th, I will be performing. I'll be closing the show. My eyes are closed because I'm trying to visualize this in Huntington Place in downtown Detroit. That's actually the same place where they're doing the International Auto Show that's going on in Detroit right now.
okay.
And I will be closing the show for the STEM conference, which is for science, technology, engineering, and math. So I'll be closing out with one of my songs for that. So yeah, got a couple things to do. And in between that, I'll be a wife and doing laundry and cooking and putting up decorations and all that fun stuff.
That's wonderful. That's really terrific. Well, look, I want to thank you I know how busy you've been. I want to thank you for giving us the time to get to know you.
Yes,
And,
thank you.
yeah, and you're just delightful, and your music is incredible.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you're going to have continued success.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being on my show. And, I just wish you the best.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you so much. And thank you for the interview, the opportunity. I'd love to talk to you again in the future.
You definitely will. We'll definitely have you back for sure.
Okay.
Especially when you have the lead in the Hollywood movie.
Yes. And maybe we can follow up with after the album has been out for a while to see how it's doing. So yeah.
We can definitely do that. Well, I'll keep in touch with you and Ron, and we'll arrange that.
Yeah, and then you can come check me out at City Winery, right?
Definitely, and Blues Alley. Yeah, there's going to be a few places in DC for sure. So again, have a great week, and congratulations. I'm looking forward to seeing more reviews of your new album, and
thank you
to see it on Billboard, and to see you at the Grammys.
Thank you. I receive all of that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye, Mel. Thanks.